Well, welcome, Christy, to the Flower Podcast.
Oh my gosh, Scott, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. I've
Well,
been looking forward to this.
I have too. We met in Las Vegas at the AIFD Symposium in person, but we just learned that our paths crossed years ago at an EMC function in Atlanta, and we didn't even know each other back then.
No,
So
that's crazy.
I know. Well, this just goes to show this community is way smaller than most people realize. You think of this global, industry that spans, the earth, and yet
True.
it's, yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those Kevin Bacon things. Like, there's only so many degrees of separation. I think Atomy might be that Kevin Bacon. Like,
She
there's
might
only.
be. She might be, which is amazing.
I know, totally. So, it's so funny too. Just a little background. I think that we became initially introduced to each other on
I
I
know
can't
what
even
you're
remember
gonna say.
I can't even remember the name of it right now. Okay, what is this stupid thing called?
Clubhouse?
Clubhouse. Okay, I'll have to We'll have to read. This is so bad. Okay. Okay. This is gonna be awful. So I'm gonna re-say that. Oh, we're gonna cut all that out. But anyway, um, except for YouTube, but I'll probably stay there. Sorry, YouTube. Anyway, so we initially, I think, got to know each other a little bit on Clubhouse when it was so popular during the COVID, you know,
Yes.
that
Yes.
time. And I know were in a lot of the same rooms and had similar conversations and things. And so I'm just thrilled to have you on the podcast. So I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad. And so, we always start with that first question. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, I will say that Christy's about to say a few things probably, and if you see her, I'm like she doesn't look old enough to be able to do all the things she's done, but she assures me that she has. So anyway, so go ahead. So I'd love to hear about your flower journey, how you got into the world of flowers.
Okay. Well, um, it starts over 30 years ago. So yes, I have been in this a long time, over 3 decades. That makes me feel old.
Yeah.
However, yeah, I started out with primarily, well, essentially in my church growing up, the there was an interior designer there that would do the weddings. And so I just fell in love with what he would create and kind of work with him on the weekends. And then I went away to school and got a degree in art and business. And my dad told me I would never be able to make a good living at flowers. So I need to figure something out, which is funny because my journey is taking me, and for all the business that I did do, I had retail shops, I've had um second locations. And you hear the did you hear the things just then? Sorry, I didn't know if you heard outside with
Oh,
the ambulance.
oh no, it
Um
didn't. That's good.
so yeah, between second location inside a hotel, so I really learned the hotel business. I've been heavily involved in events and weddings. That's been my passion. Um, Although I love the distribution side, working with the growers. I learned how to get flowers from around the world, have them shipped into Miami, got a truck from Miami to my shop, gave them to other people, other florists, so that I would kind of be a hub for distribution. And I love the education. So I've been a past president of a floral association here in the DC area, part of EMC. Gosh, the list goes on.
Wow, for sure. Well,
And now,
yeah.
now I just coach. I coach and consult creative entrepreneurs, especially florists, in how to run a profitable business.
So, wow. I know I was telling you on my way home, I was listening to your podcast, and It's really good, and I can really find a
Thank
lot of
you.
value in it. So thank you for doing that. I wanted to. Okay, so when you had a flower shop, was it a flower shop or was it more weddings and events?
Um, I had retail and I did events as well. So I was one of the crazy ones that really kept up both of those going.
That's hard.
Um, yes, yes. But I at one point I had the two locations. We were doing a fair amount of events on the weekends, maybe sometimes up to, I think the most we ever did was seven. Um, but I had a seven-figure business. I had a team of about 15. Um, Great. It was great, but nobody really prepared me for the fact that I would need to be a strong leader. I would really need to know my numbers. I come from an entrepreneurial family, so of course I did kind of know it, but yet I was a creative. So I was like, oh gosh. Um, so that really took some work, but I loved it and I still love it. That's why I'm involved.
Wow. And for you to morph, so did you sell your businesses or close them? How did that kind of happen?
Yeah, well, I had planned a couple years ago after coming on with EMC that I would start to phase out the retail side of the businesses, doing the events and the weddings and the retail shop. And so I did that. And it just so happened that I was closing in the middle of 2020. So,
Wow, that's convenient.
well, or a little inconvenient when I had like 40,000 worth of inventory that I had to show
Ah,
people one at a time and clean after any person came in. That was excruciating, closing down a 30-year-old business, um,
wow.
with, like trying to get rid of inventory with only my husband, myself, and one other person.
Yeah, and people not really being able to conduct business as normal.
Yeah,
So are they scared to spend money in inventory? So,
exactly,
uh,
exactly. But
wow,
yes, I
so
mean,
much.
Bergeron still lives on. Another person bought the website, the phone number, and all of that. So yeah, but it's been an exciting journey.
That's awesome. Well, I'm intrigued with your decision. I guess which came first, the EMC or the coaching?
EMC came first. Um, and I just knew as things were winding down that I just have a passion with the business side. It's kind of my superpower, right? That I'm equally kind of left and right brain in the way I approach things. So yeah, and I naturally mentored a lot of people. I've had a lot of people that have worked for me in the past that went on to open up their own businesses. So I've encouraged that quite a bit.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that is a superpower. And you don't see a lot of it in our industry, even though there is some, but that's amazing. And so with EMC, for people who don't know, because I get asked questions often about training and education, where can they go? What do they do? And there's different platforms out there. So
Yes.
do you mind kind of telling us what EMC is and kind of just breaking that down for us?
Sure. Well, EMC stands for European Master Certification. So it is a certification program in European floral design, focusing on the theory behind things and the practical application of it. I think as a graduate myself, because I went through it and graduated in 2016, I think it is really, truly amazing in that it teaches you the theory, but it also allows you to keep your creativity. You're not learning how to copy something. with the program, it's pretty much like you get assignments. Like we have 3 parts to it. And there's a foundation, there's a practicum, and advanced. And the first 2 parts we've moved to online during COVID. And it's really been fascinating because we have a hybrid model of coaching and analysis along with watching the videos and things like that. There are coaches through EMC that actually talk to them about their work, but they all have the same assignment. Nobody has the same looking design. It's really incredible.
You wonder if that's because being online, you're not influenced by seeing other people doing things.
Yeah, but if we look at our catalog of things that's happened in the past when we were in
Sure.
person, it's the same effect.
Oh,
And so it teaches you a language of how to design and speak to others so that you can communicate, but it also deep dives into nomenclature. So it's perfect for the flower podcast because if you love flowers, right, we feel like it's our medium and it's our responsibility to really know our medium and know how to work with it. So there's such a vast amount of what we choose to work with, right? And when we know more about it and how to work with certain varieties and how they hold up, what they need, it it makes it just an amazing opportunity.
that's
Think about
great.
it. Like when we get to know the Latin names of our flowers instead of just common names, we could work anywhere in the world
It's true.
and speak a common language, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, I am glad to hear about that because I wondered how that was working. And then the third part, the advanced part, does that location move around or is it one place
No,
or
it's
how does
in
that work?
person. It's in person in Belgium, only once a year for 10 days. So that's where all the testing happens. Graduation at City Hall in Bruges. I mean, it's quite an amazing experience.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad to hear about that, and I know that I've seen a lot of people really get a lot out of that program over the
Mhm.
years, and how cool that you get to be a part of that.
Oh,
So
it's a blessing. I'm grateful.
yeah, so this parlayed somehow into coaching, or was this some sudden? Or I'm trying to figure out where did
How
this
did it work?
yeah this new desire come forth.
Well, I mean, I think the okay,
Fine.
there's the dog.
That's fine. That's not bad.
um I think for me, as far as the way that the coaching came about was my desire to still work with people and still help them achieve the same type of success that I've been able to see. Um, and I think realizing what I could do and what I brought to EMC and running the business side and knowing how to do the marketing, seeing that the things that I did in my own business, how they were successful, and realizing after talking to other people that, okay, you don't do it that way. Oh my gosh. Like, oh, well, here's a way how to do this. This is really good. Try it out, kind of thing. Um, but I also started to realize when I started consulting with some of these people, I realized that it wasn't always the problems. Sometimes I believe that our personal problems leak into our business, and that's really often what's the problem, right? It's what we bring, the things that hold us back, the things that keep us from making decisions because we're scared or we're, you know, thinking that it's the wrong move, right? So I kind of added the coaching aspect and I went for a neuro coaching certification so that I could learn how to help my clients also with the way they think about something, how that can change and really completely change how they do business as well. So it's a combination. When I work with a client, it's talking to them about their mindset and where they're at, and then also consulting with them on whatever area is not working and helping that reach their vision.
Sure. So, it's interesting because I've listened to some podcasts on this topic. So, but I don't want to presume by any stretch of the imagination that other people know what neuro coaching or that type of coaching is. And I think it's fascinating. And I'd love for you to kind of share a little more about that because
Sure.
I think a lot of people don't realize, a lot of times people, talk about speaking affirmations or things like that, but sometimes there's deeper roots, I think, that kind of have to get fixed before some of that other kind of stuff really
Yes.
you see the benefits for it. So if you don't
Yes.
mind, I'd love to for you to explain that.
Sure. Um, Neuroscience is about, it's all about brain-based kind of coaching, right? So that realizing it's not just sometimes what you're saying, you're like you said, it's deeper rooted. There's something else going on, and it can't be just by changing what you're saying. Sometimes it actually is about taking that, figuring out those, we call them ants, automatic negative thoughts that keep coming up and playing. How do you actually rewrite that? So, ones that dive fully into it, you can rewrite a neural pathway in your brain, which is totally amazing. Um, Here's a huge example. Okay, so they say it takes 21 days, right, to break a habit or start a
Right.
new habit, right?
Right.
At it's the In neuroscience, it actually shows at 21 days, both habits are still there. And in order for that old habit to go away, it actually takes 67 days on that new habit, and then the old habit breaks. You can see it break, a synapse break in the brain, where it breaks that old habit and the new one is formed. So it's kind of like at 21 days, you know, they're still fighting with each other. Like, who's going to win out? So,
Maybe they just say
um,
21 days because that doesn't seem as bad as 67 days. But and they're trying to just get you to drink the Kool-Aid. But
yeah,
I think that it just goes to show, and you might have some thoughts here. It just goes to show how deeply entrenched some things are.
yes, yes. Especially when you start to think about, okay, so why does this keep happening to me? So obviously, I am of the belief that, life happens for us, not to us, right? Because generally there's so many lessons that we can learn about whatever's happening and get it to be something that's, um, something better than what we thought before. However, if we are stuck, we can generally look back and say, okay, has this been something that's been repeated in the past? And oftentimes, entrepreneurs, we're remembering something and we're like, okay, I did it this way, and you keep doing it again and again, right? Insanity.
Right.
But then you're like, how do I break that? Well, that's when you need someone else to come along and say, okay, maybe this time we get to try it this way. And if this is what's stopping you, then have you ever experienced that before? And how did you do it? If it's, yes, I've been able to have success before, then it's possible to have success again. It's not impossible. So I think I love seeing breakthroughs happen with clients, because it can be the smallest thing that's keeping them safe. And then all of a sudden, once that's gone and they realize they don't have to hold on to that anymore, um, everything can change in their business and their personal life. Coaching is about the future. Therapy is about focusing on the past.
Mm.
So as a coach, that's really what I go for.
Yeah, that's really good. I've never heard it put that way before, but it's really true.
Mm.
And I think sometimes it can get confusing a little bit because they're so intertwined. Um, but obviously, by having someone helpful like yourself, you can maybe get beyond that and then rebuild your future.
So true. So
Yeah.
true.
I really think this is fascinating. One of the things I often wonder, and I know I've had the opportunity to ask others, so I'm curious about your opinion. When you're working with creatives, and our industry is filled with them,
Mhm.
which is a good thing.
Yes.
And I feel like there may be some reoccurring challenges that they might have that the average entrepreneur does not have. Some businesses, it's all about the widget, and it's you can you're producing numbers or volume. I mean, it's different things, and it's the same really for creative businesses in a way. But I'm curious what you think. Or is there any recurring things that you've dealt with, or you see in working with clients that might be helpful for our listeners?
Um, on the coaching side,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the majority of everyone underestimates what they are capable of.
Hmm.
Um, they don't see themselves in the light that others do. And we let things that happen around us kind of set us up for what we think is possible, right? It's just
Right.
like masterminding, right? When you get into a mastermind type group, and I think more creatives would do better with this, but they can realize it when you're actually in a group of designers and you get to be creative for a weekend, you come away energized because you've got, oh my gosh, there's so much. And there's people that are giving and suggesting, and there's things that do, and you get excited about it, right?
Right.
Same thing happens on the business side. So most feel like they're on an island unto themselves and don't have anybody to talk to. And then there's the competition. And then, oh my gosh, what if Susie down the street sees what I'm doing? And, then I'm toast, right? um, it's it's not that way. There is no one has that one thing that you have, and that is you. So every business is unique. You just have to be able to tap into that. And I think that's why I love EMC so much, because EMC is all about you tapping into your signature style and using the tools to create that for you even more. Same thing goes for business. I'm all about, you just need to have the tools to run a really good business and set yourself on fire to go out and do what you do best. But it all starts with a solid foundation. And if you're not in the right mindset to do that, you're going to struggle.
So, in doing coaching and focusing on the future, how do you kind of approach that foundation? You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I feel like, especially people coming off COVID, people now, it's kind of gone from first gear to fifth gear, and if there's a sixth gear, we have to find it. Because
Yes.
I mean, people talking about doing so many weddings now, or so many events, or just their business overall is up, and it's like they're trying to just deal with fundamental, getting the orders out, getting them delivered, or getting crops harvested, or having enough logistics to handle volume. All these things I think about all the time, and and it's like just the idea of having to work on me. That seems overwhelming. I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. However, you're you're with you every day. So why not work on you? I mean, if you're unhappy and overwhelmed and stressed and can't see the end, the forest for the trees, right? Because look, I totally been there. And I do everything right? Absolutely not. Did I have major setbacks? Absolutely. I've been through 3 recessions.
Wow, I
So,
didn't think about that, but you're right. Wow.
yeah. So I think of it's possible, but it's only been in the last, I don't know, I'd say probably 5 or 6 years that I really started diving in more to high performance habits. What kind of habits do I need to be? One, to be a strong leader, to lead a team. What kind of habits do I need to have in order to be um, a, a creative, a designer, right? To be able to design and let that flow. Because we can get so caught up with, oh my gosh, okay, we've got how many events coming up and I need to order these flowers, and oh, they've gone up in price 3 times since the time I actually put in the proposal to someone. How do I deal with that? That we start to lose our creative juice. So how do you deal with that? It's about taking the actions, taking time for yourself, realizing that you can set yourself up for success by following a few things and figuring out, first of all, though, where those lapses are happening, and then implementing it to go to the next level. I think that's really what's difficult. And I think oftentimes we put ourselves in the situation, and that was one of my last podcasts was about too, like when you get discouraged, you tend to start to see everything as bad.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, separate yourself out. How can you re-energize yourself? And then let's look at the business. Let's look at the numbers. What area in your business? Because I don't care what business you have, there are 6 main activities every business has, right? Developing the business, sales, marketing, fulfilling the product ordered, right? Your operations and administration, and your team management. And I don't care if you're a solopreneur, you've got to manage yourself, right? In your time.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's the approach I take, because where are you currently and where do you want to be? So if you're in you lost years 2 through 4 because of COVID, and you're like, where did that go? So all I'm like, okay, where are you currently and what's that vision look like? And when then all most people see is there's a gap and I don't know how to fix it.
Mm.
So all I do, and I like to say it like this, like I look at that, then you see your vision as a landscape, right? There's mountains there. So what I do is I help you break it down into rocks and then break it down into stones, because you can throw stones, you can move stones really quick. So
I love that.
that's my approach.
So you mentioned, and you may have just touched on it, but you mentioned um, high performance habits.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say that right? High performing habits.
Yes.
Um, and it's interesting because I don't know that I've heard that term used before. I'm wondering if you could give us a couple examples of what you mean by that.
Okay. Well, one, well, have you ever heard of Brendan Burchard? He's in the self-development kind of genre. Really excellent speaker, and he has a book called High Performance Habits. That's really what changed it for me,
Hmm.
was reading that. But then part of that too is like productivity, right? That's a high performance habit. You can tell when someone is procrastinating. Often it's because more of them, their brain keeping them safe again, right? if someone's putting something off, then I get to look at and say, okay, why is this putting off for you? What is there something that's holding you back? Are you feeling scared about something, taking a next step? Is it something that feels weird to you because you've never been there before? Or is it because you don't want to deal with something? Like, what if you've hired the wrong person and you just continue to keep that person on because it's easier to throw that money away than it is to deal with the situation, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
um, but then it's only hurting you and your business ultimately. So, I mean, you're procrastinating. So, procrastination really affects your productivity. And when you aren't productive, you suffer personally and you suffer business wise. And if you have a team, it's going to affect your whole team if you're not productive because they're looking to you for the guide of who's guiding the ship.
Right. Well, and I think too, I mean, and I don't know nearly as much about this as you, but the one thing it screams out to me is the loss of time. You might sit here and think, "Oh, I can afford to throw that money away," or "I'm the only one being uncomfortable in this bad situation." But meanwhile, the time you're losing in being really productive or utilizing, your or maximizing your business's full potential because you don't want to deal with that or you're procrastinating about it for whatever reason, I'm like, that you can't get that time back. So,
No. Mm-mm. And
yeah.
if you think about it, there's fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Yes.
When we don't do something. So are you running away from something? Are you just standing still and not making a decision is making a decision? So you're choosing every day if you're not going to move forward or if you're deciding that you're going to just, leave it the way it is. Or are you um fighting something that would be great for you, or fighting something that is just a continual, like somebody punching you in the arm, and after a while you're like, oh my gosh. Right, and then it totally sets you off, so then you're fighting it. So
Right.
often if you can just sit back and even recognize in yourself, okay, what am I doing here? Am I fighting it? Am I flying? Am I running away from something? Or am I just freezing because I don't want to make a decision? Those work. And then necessity is another high performance habit, where is what's necessary? And is this worth my time?
Mm,
It's what I'm doing helping to get me where I want to go? Or is it holding me back? And a lot of times, sometimes that's conversations. Maybe it's the conversation we don't want to have with a client because we're uncomfortable about the price increase in our flowers and what we told them it was going to cost. And maybe we're like uncomfortable because we didn't update our contracts. I mean, so many things come to mind. We could
yeah.
talk for hours.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's definitely something too, I think falls into those blind spot areas of us because, it's like you said earlier, it's our brain trying to keep us safe and it's really not in a way. It's that false sense of security just because it's
Mhm.
familiar. I think it's that I think it's the familiar. We feel comfortable in the familiar and having to break out to grow in this area of technology or grow in an area of learning how to source differently or whatever that might be. It's just uncomfortable and it's a challenge. And
Well, and I totally get that. I mean, there are some things that I think are still a challenge. And I also think that there are some things where um, I'm like, oh gosh, I really don't want to deal with that today. But but at the end of the day, if I don't deal with it, who's going to deal with it?
right, exactly. No, absolutely.
it's just going to keep popping right back up.
Yeah. Well, again, I know these are huge topics and it's hard to cover in an hour podcast, and I appreciate us touching on them, and I'm sure we'll come back to them. One of the things I heard, um, and I didn't get to finish listening, so I don't fully know how to approach this, but you were in your podcast, you were talking about, I think it was, it had to do with closing,
Mm.
and I can't tell you how many times I mean, being in sales for a long time, I know there were times I didn't ask for the sale. I know that that is the biggest problem with so many people, is they're afraid to take, they're good at the 95%, but it's
Mm-hmm.
that last 5% of asking for the sale, or how to finalize that agreement. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And maybe there's people out there, or I know there are people out there that would benefit from just hearing some pointers on how you approach that.
Sure. Yeah, I did a whole series on objections in the podcast for sure. And yeah, a lot of that comes from, I can't even tell you. I've done so many weddings and so many corporate events, right? And working with them and talking with them and learning how to read the client. We're learning how to figure out which one is the buyer and which one is there for the emotion. Um, Sometimes they're not the same person, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to know how to speak to both of them. And it can be intimidating. It's also empowering though to realize I'm in charge. They came to me. I get the opportunity to create their vision and let them know that they can be at rest, knowing I'm going to take care of them and execute that. And, you know, I've been going over like just offers in my course that I'm recording right now to help within my coaching, because, you know, having our offers, we have to know how to close. We have to know how to talk to them. We have to know how to not sound like a robot, right?
Yes.
And lean into what they're saying. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned early on, and I learned this from Alex Berg, who teaches a lot on sales in the wedding industry, was to learn the buying signals. That when someone is leaning in, when someone is nodding, when someone is smiling or asking more questions about working with you while you're in that consultation, while you're working with them, right? That those are indications where it's okay. Go ahead. Ask for the sale. Do not let them get away. do not do not run out the door.
Okay. So let me ask this question. So I think about, it seems like there's this flow in the conversation where you're selling a vision, you're selling this dream, you're selling, this experience is what you're selling in a way. And you can tell you're getting the signals, you're seeing the signals, you're doing all that. And it just seems so unnatural to say, oh, let me pull out the contracts now. Or, oh, which credit card would you like to use?
No,
You know what I
because
mean?
it's
How,
not
how do you
even,
how do you make that flow, I guess, is what I'm
well,
wondering.
because okay, here's a great thing. Let's say what's your favorite food, Scott?
Well, I'm a big Mexican food person.
Oh gosh, awesome. I love Mexican food.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, okay, and so let's say that someone else is in the room here and they've said, my favorite is pizza. Okay. And I don't know, let's say that Sue, I don't know who Sue is, but I'm just saying Sue says that she loves shrimp. Okay. So Scott, Do you want pizza?
Sure.
But that's not your favorite food.
Okay, well, you didn't ask me that question. So,
So if you have a choice,
uh-huh.
and first of all, but let's say I'm just asking you that day, do
Oh,
you
okay.
want pizza? Do you want pizza? Right?
Uh-huh.
If you said yes, awesome, then I'm gonna go forward and say, okay, let's talk about the next steps. However, if I said, Scott, great, I'm so glad we were able to do this. So now after we've been talking today, there are the three options. Do you want Mexican, or do you want some pizza, or would you like some shrimp?
Okay. You've given me choices.
Right. I didn't give you a choice for yes or no.
Hmm.
So when I asked you if you wanted pizza, you said yes. So you did say yes, and we would move forward. However, when I give you a choice, I'm not giving you the opportunity to say no to me. I'm giving you the opportunity to choose which way you're going to work with me.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually.
Right. And so when that happens, that's when I say, awesome. The pizza is the fantastic way to go. And I think we can move forward. What I'd really love to do with you is go ahead and figure out which way you want to pay. There's the pay in full option, or we can go with a deposit, however way you feel comfortable with. Again, I'm not giving them, do you want to pay with credit card today? I'm saying, here's the two options. There is no yes or no choice.
Yeah, I like that a lot because I think that's where people I do you okay, so you're the coach. Do you feel like sometimes people ask that because that's an easier question to ask, or do you think this is a skill that has to be developed if as far as the choice giving choices?
It's a way to develop it. First of all, like for instance, I got to the point where I no longer like if I had them in the consultation and I needed time to put together a proposal before they left the consultation, I already scheduled my follow-up with them to go over the proposal. I don't let them walk out that door without the follow-up scheduled.
That's a good point.
And so then I've set up the expectation, one, that they know that they're going to get something from me, and two, that I have the opportunity now to speak to them again after they've had some time to talk. And yeah, they may go see somebody else, and that's totally okay. I realize this is the way the world works, right?
Right.
I know that I'm confident that I can do their vision. So I think the choice is, it's something to learn. It's not, I don't think it comes natural to us.
Well, I think this goes back to that it makes us vulnerable a little bit, and we have to put ourselves out there, and we're afraid of the no, and that's why I love so much the fact that you're giving them these choices. And I'm thinking, okay, so if you're at the end of a consultation and you're rescheduling that appointment to follow up with them to go over a proposal and all that, so do you give them those three choice? I'm sorry to be so nitty gritty, but I'm just
No,
wanting,
go ahead.
so do you give them those choices at the follow up or at that
At the
initial?
follow-up, at
Okay.
the follow-up. However, if they're in that consultation and they're ready to book with you then, and you've gotten all those buying signals, right? Then I take the deposit. Which way would
Sure.
you like to pay? We can do credit card or we can do check. I'm so glad you asked, right? Because if they're saying, okay, well, how can we seal the deal? How can we hold the date? Because again, part of my thing is too, is that I always ask them, one of my incentives to get someone to purchase is I hold your date for 7 days after the proposal. After that, then the date is open. So it's letting them know I don't play around. I don't have time to hold your time. I've done you a courtesy by holding your date until I consulted with you. Um, So as soon as I get that done and you get that proposal, you've got 7 days.
And I think that's brilliant. I really like that. Um,
Because a great offer has the offer, right, with the prices, has the promise of what you're delivering, and you're guaranteeing that you're going to show up, and then an incentive to buy. An incentive to buy doesn't have to be money off the table or something like that. I just gave the incentive of urgency.
right, right. Wow. Okay, so let me ask this question because I can feel someone thinking this. Um, so does that mean you come up with three different proposals?
Now, oftentimes, what I'll find is that they will have certain things that are on their wish list that they're not really sure if they can add that in or not. And
Mm-hmm.
I will use that as the options. Do you want to do the one where we actually add more on for the ceremony like you wanted? Or do we want to stay within the budget that you had talked about? Or, and I could do it just with two if I needed to,
Sure.
right? But again, I'm still giving them a choice, not a yes or no.
And that choice is, especially like you just said, this one was within your budget, but doesn't have everything you wanted. But then you have this a la carte to add everything back in that you wanted. So it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's still great options.
Well, and again, it's all about their choice. They're choosing something. I'm not choosing it for them. Oftentimes, you'll see, like, that's the other thing. If somebody comes back to me and has said, I just talked to so and so, and they gave me a better price. I'm wondering if you would be able to meet that price. And I would be, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you reached out again. Um, since my proposal is fully, packaged with the way I see your vision, I have no idea if that is the same vision that they've been able to glean from you. My price is according to what you've asked me to give you. So, because the reason why I don't go down on the price to price match is because they've come back to me. If they didn't want to come back to you and they thought that other person was the right person, they would have never even come back to talk to you. So you have the upper hand. What are you waiting for? Don't take the lower price.
Yeah, I love that. I as I'm thinking about this strategy and the words and the methodology, I think it doesn't matter really what you're doing. If you're a flower farmer selling at a farmer's market, if you're a retail florist and someone walks in or calls you on the phone, this is still something you can use in any of those scenarios, right?
Oh yeah. Um in fact, Tim, what's his last name? Tim
Huckabee.
Huckabee, right,
Mm-hmm.
for Floral Strategies. He does the three thing option for retail, which I wholeheartedly accepted, doing that in retail as well, because the three choices, I mean, people call and half the time they want to know what flowers you have or something like that. They don't even know half the varieties that you're going to the name off, right? They don't even know what Larkspur or Solidago are. Like, they're not even thinking of it. And then it's all about, really, it's emotion. You're selling emotion. And again, the guarantee for like weddings and events and even like retail for the florist, it's always an emotional guarantee. There are some people that do a guarantee, like, what, like your car, right? If this doesn't last, you can come in, you've got so many days or up to so much amount. That's their guarantee. But in what we do, ours is always an emotional guarantee.
That is so true. I've never thought about it that way before. Because you think about freshness, longevity, did the flowers arrive broken, which again can be an emotional reaction, but someone's buying flowers for a purpose, and it's an emotional response to whatever you created as that creative person, florist, floral
Yes.
designer. And you're right. You're absolutely right. How do you guarantee a reaction? I never thought about it that way.
Well, think about it. Think about how wonderful it was when in the retail shops now that they have that opportunity where you can send the photo. So you're giving
Oh, right.
you're giving the sender back the like, "Oh, okay, like it's my emotion too for seeing the arrangement, and I can't wait to hear from the recipient." So it used to be that you would only hear from the recipient, right? And then, then people got a little wonky and didn't always say thank you. And and then it became up to us to try and let the sender know that the flowers were delivered and everything was great. But that hits our emotional thing when we get that ping and we get the thing saying the flowers were delivered. The emotion that you wanted delivered has been delivered.
And that helps manage expectation on their
Mhm.
end, and they even get more excited about it. And honestly, I think that really cultivates a lot of community or relationships with your customers, because you care enough to just to send them that picture for them to kind of even be more attached, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Wow.
an exciting thing to be able to do. And I don't think creatives realize how creative they can be in closing.
So true. So true. Well, I know again, there's so many things we could talk about, but I want I knew this was gonna, like, this hour has almost flown by. We're not even over yet, but I know, and I knew when we were talking in Vegas, this is gonna be a lot of fun. I I always like to ask for that piece of advice that has either meant a
Mm.
lot to you, or maybe something you've read, or something you just would like to pass on to our listeners.
Well, something that I say a lot, and I don't even remember where I heard it first, but it's so true in everything. What you focus on grows. And it's apropos for what we do, right? With flowers and growing.
Absolutely.
Um, but when we focus on something, it will grow. If we nourish it, if we feed it, if we give it attention, it grows. Relationships, client relationships, those kinds of things, all of that is important. And we
Good.
get to focus on ourselves too, right? Because when we do, we flourish.
And so many times that's where I think it really has to begin, but it never does. I think we get all excited about, oh, we get to work with flowers, and I love flowers, and I love making people happy, and I love delivering those little bundles of joy and all of that. And I don't know how long it takes. I think it's different for everybody, but at some time you start to feel burned out a little bit, and and then it comes back to your why, or it comes back to, like, what you just talked about, focusing on yourself. And
Hmm.
yeah, so much, so much. um if people want to learn more about what you do or connect with you, what are some good ways for them to do that?
You can always go to my website, ChristiLopez.com, or you can check me out on Instagram, Christi Lopez Coach, and you can check out my podcast, Business Success for Creatives. Um, and so, yeah, I would love to chat with you, with anyone that wants to learn how to grow their business.
Sure. And do you have a community? Do you have?
I do have a community. It's
Yeah.
Business for Creatives, and it's on Circle. It's a free community for anyone that wants to join. I can give you a link if you want to put it in your show notes or whatever, but
Sure.
it's a fantastic way just to kind of get into my ecosystem. So,
That's awesome. Well, great. Well, Christy, thank you so much for your time, and I so appreciate
Such a pleasure.
Yeah,
Such a
thank
pleasure.
you.